Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. It's always great to welcome back my recurring guests like SFG Chief Brett Jones. We discuss the philosophy behind seeking mastery and having skills like the coach's eye when working with online training. Brett is an athletic trainer who currently teaches functional movement systems and kettlebells as the Director of Education for StrongFirst. He is a wealth of information on all things fitness, so I picked his brain on the differences between athletic trainers and physical therapists. We also discussed the future of personal training and how regulations for coaches may evolve over time. I enjoy these conversations and hope you do too. My favor, as usual, is to please continue to share this podcast with others and rate it on your platform of choice. If you'd like to support this podcast with a donation to help keep it going, you can do so on my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. I would certainly appreciate it. Even as little as $1 per month goes a long way. For comments or suggestions, email me at sifumimichan@gmail.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now on with the show. Hello, Brett. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Mimi, thank you for having me back. And it's great to be on the rebranded podcast.
Oh, my goodness. You're so astute. Well, I love that you're a recurring guest on this show because this is actually, I think, number 6 for us.
Oh, wow.
So that means more than one a year.
That's right. We're knocking these down. I didn't realize I'd been on that many times.
Yeah. I keep bugging you. I'm like, hey, it's time for us to talk again. And I think generally that was one of the things with the rebrand was, I realized that as much as I love new guests all the time and meeting new people, I really enjoy kind of going deeper and getting to know my recurring guests that kind of like to just continue those conversations. There's just so much there. And whenever I have a great connection, I feel like, people want more Brett. So.
Wow. Well, I'll try to live up to the expectations. And if there's one thing I can do, it's talk. Yes.
We've established that this goes quite well and pretty smoothly. We don't usually run out of things to say. So
absolutely not.
But, here we are again in the Zoom sphere. And I thought I would start off with the fact that online training in general for, because you are, of course, a strength coach, and it has been a huge kind of trend since the pandemic. It was kind of there before, for us on the Kung Fu side, we did like private lessons with people who were already in our system, seasoned. We knew them, we knew how they moved, but we had never taken on brand new students through the internets. And so, of course, 2020 made that a necessity versus something that was kind of supplementary or an option, right? And I know that you've offered online training for a long time, but I'm curious since you maybe having to make those adjustments, but for you as a strength coach, like, is there more challenges to teaching online? Do you prefer it? I mean, I like the benefit that I get to just watch you whenever you coach Oscar and listen and be that fly on the wall that I'm sure like thousands of people are like, oh man, I wish I could be like listening in on Brett Jones coaching. I'm like, yeah, well, I get to do that because, I'm the camera person, very important role that I have. But I find it remarkable of how well it works. And I will admit every single time right after the lesson, I'm like, I'm going to pick up my kettlebells again. You're super inspiring, but then life often gets in the way. But do you find it's much more challenging online versus in person?
So as usual, I'll go a couple different directions. I have been offering online training for quite some time. And actually back in 2006, I started trying to offer more remote training. And at that time, the online options as far as, video and things like that were not strong. Mm-hmm. And so I let that go for a while. And then as the video options became far more accessible and easy, I started back. But I've been, online training for, 10 years, something like that. I'd have to look back, and record keeping is not my strong suit.
Irrelevant.
But so I've been doing it for a long time, and it's made me a better coach. It's made me a better trainer, because your ability to spot things has to be dialed in. Your coaching and cueing has to be dialed in. And I'm sure this will resonate as a martial arts instructor. There's times where just poking somebody or making that little adjustment in where they are in space gets things to happen very quickly. Not an option online. So you have to, from a coaching and cueing standpoint, you're completely hands off, obviously, and you have to be dialed in with your coaching and cueing. So I feel it's made me a better trainer. And I was always amused prior to the pandemic. There would be pundits and industry experts who poo-pooed online training as so vastly inferior to in-person training and blah 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 blah. And these are the same people that would come out with online training products midway through how to be an online trainer, midway through the pandemic.
Right.
So they made a quick pivot and realized that online training, very viable option, can be very effective. And there's also times where it's better to be in person. So there's times where, you accept the fact that things are going to take just a little bit longer, because you're just not able to make that split second coaching, cueing, tactile change. And, but I've enjoyed it. I mean, I think that it's been, like I said, it's made me a better coach and trainer.
Yeah. I mean, let's just look at the facts as well, that we're here in Orlando, Florida, and we still get to benefit from being able to have that connectivity, which it would be a lot less efficient to have to fly up every time there was a lesson. Well, that would be cool. It wouldn't be realistic. And so it enables you to have such a different reach. And there was something you mentioned there that resonated with us, because of course, as a martial arts teacher, you're really used to like kind of wrangling people. You're very hands-on. You have to do like contact, but of course, with the pandemic and us being, in with safety and health protocols, even coming back in person, we are not doing hands-on stuff even yet. Like we're still kind of being very careful. And so that forced us to up our cueing and learn how to communicate by, not utilizing it wasn't a crutch, but like what we're just used to, right? It's like, oh, now we have to really be able to describe direction and angles. That's probably the most challenging thing for online for us, is like the angles and just because everything's in 2D. But I love watching you when you're watching, because you just have this like a Brett Jones stare, I call it. You've got that watchful eye, and it's like you don't even blink. But it's amazing because even with the cameras, like, I mean, we all have pretty decent, high def now and stuff, but still, you can miss so much. But you're able to just catch the most minute details, and I find it. There it is. That's like a master of that movement. Like, the movement so well that every like little nuance, and I always find it like completely fascinating. So.
Well, thank you, first off. And I think that we talk about it in the terms of, finding your coach's eye. And one of the things that I encourage instructors to do, artists use something, there is a concept within art of negative space. Look for what's not there, and then the other stuff becomes apparent. And I bring that to my coaching, especially online. You have to step back and watch the entire movement. And at that point, the things that you want to see will become apparent. If I'm running the checklist and I'm looking at the feet, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, the eyes, where's the head? Like, it's just, you can't do that. Like, and some people get really good at catching a particular flaw. Like, they're really good at zeroing in on what's happening at the eyes and neck, but they're missing the feet. So, that ability to just kind of step back, watch that entire movement, use that kind of negative space concept to elevate what you're able to see is a key coaching skill to develop.
Yeah, definitely. I think that also speaks to, though, the fact that you can't do that unless you have a certain level of experience and knowledge, because it's the numbers game too. You've seen like millions of swings. And so after a while you go, oh, okay, like you can catch things a lot quicker. I always have to bring up watching you on Instagram and just being completely annoyed and wowed over your strength journey, not just because you're unbelievably, incredibly strong and the numbers that you throw up there seem kind of ridiculous, but also, of course, you've recovered and rehabbed from injuries before. You've had a lot of, okay, I'm getting this surgery now it's time to rebuild. And of course, checking in with you post cancer treatments. And I saw, congratulations, you passed that 1 year. I couldn't believe how fast this felt. I mean, it probably didn't feel fast for you, but it was like, wow, the 1 year mark. And, was rebuilding strength this time any different from perhaps an injury, because it's such a different shock to your system versus, okay, this is muscular. I know it because you're an athletic trainer. Like, exactly the nuances that you need to fix. Whereas this was just something completely different.
It was completely different. And just for those people that I'm not going to go through my entire medical history because it's
you can look at the 5 other episodes with
right. It takes time. But I have had like 9 different surgeries. And that's everything from a left inguinal hernia repair. I had a septoplasty, got my nose broken a bunch of times in high school wrestling, and they couldn't breathe. So they had to go in and do the inside. They obviously didn't. Why would you mess with this piece of art on the outside? I did have a low back surgery. Ventral hernia repair, the biopsy for the throat cancer, right knee surgery many years ago. No, left knee surgery many years ago, right knee surgery end of 2019. So yeah, different things have happened. Only like 2 of those are related to actual physical things, training related. The right knee that I just had done was actually, I was flipping a rather large tire doing some strongman training, and my foot slipped.
Oh.
And krapow, it made a very loud noise. And within 2 hours was very large. And I couldn't deep squat for like 6 months. Like wow. It was pretty significant. But that was 15 years before I had to have it taken care of. Mm-hmm. And that's life and mileage and things happen. But this, and over those years, the kettlebell was always how I got back to training. And so, yeah, I've rehabbed and come back from a lot of different things. And this was really different. Losing 40 pounds over the course of treatment. The way, and I think we talked about this previously, 4.5 weeks in, and I would have told you things are going great. Now, chemo weeks suck because chemo is hard. And I had some nausea problems and things like that. The radiation side effects are really what got me. And I had a significant amount of pain and problems. And I had lost the 40 pounds. And so when I started back training, it was really rebuilding from a low point that I had not experienced previously. And this will sound, well, I don't know how it'll sound, but for me, starting over was the 24 kilo bell. And that's where I started to rebuild my strength, and especially the kind of strength aerobics protocol that I've been working on and putting together. That's I was struggling through 15 to 20 sets of that with the 24 kilo. Now I'm doing 40 to 60 sets with the 36 kilo and adding in the 40. And so, yeah, my strength has come back, and I've come back, but it was eye-opening. That first workout coming back was like, ooh, this is different.
Right. And I think it's just one of those moments too, though, where thank goodness you had the foundation that you did, right? Because for you, the 24 is like what some people will never get to. For people who are listening that have no idea what a kettlebell is, but it's super heavy and it's not easy to wield. And basically, and so I think it's like there's something there though that also could break one's soul or like constitution, because you think, wait, this is supposed to be simple for me and not in a, in a bragging way, but like, this is something that was your basic, like this was simple. That was it. I always call it like, oh, this is like a certain stretch or the cartwheel. If I can't do this, then I know that's it. I'm done. Like this should be basic. This should be something very simple. It's what my body knows, that muscle memory, but then it's like that shock, and it could be very, very frustrating, I think. And a lot of people wouldn't have gone forward. But of course, we've talked on this podcast a lot of how you define strength and who you are. And this is definitively a big part of who you are. And so of course you're able to kind of move past that. But yeah, I think that in one way, maybe I wonder if when you picked up that bell for the first time, if that was like, oh, good, my foundation's still there, or was it more like, oh crap, I can't believe feels difficult, where was your head at?
Combination of things.
Okay,
I mean, I appreciated, and I knew how challenged I was at that point. Being prior to treatment, and I kept my training pretty aggressive up until treatment started. And so I went in strong and could not believe the change, but that, did a couple body weight workouts and then realized, I want to get back to the bell. And it was eye-opening. It was, I'm not going to say humbling, because I knew where I was. I wasn't going in with this expectation of I'm going to throw this around like I used to. And that's, as a trainer, I talk about meeting people where they are. And I did that for myself. I tried to meet myself where I was at that moment and be realistic with my training and just know that, getting back was going to take time. And I knew I talked to my family about this at the end of treatment, and then the 7 to 10 weeks after treatment that it took me to really recover. I knew it was going to be a year. It was going to be a year process. I looked at this as a major life change and something that was going to take time to get back to. And it did. It took time.
Yeah.
And, but the journey, the opportunity to almost relearn things like that, I really, the kettlebell snatch is a skill that I kind of rebuilt, using the opportunity of knowing I was coming back in at this lower level. For me, I took that opportunity to rebuild that skill, and it's been really rewarding in so many ways to rebuild, relearn, and refine different techniques.
Yeah. And I think that must be super helpful, especially since you're always writing books and programming and things like that. And I know that even me as a teacher, you get to a point in your training, you get to a point where as you look around, like you have a small group of peers perhaps, but then it's like when you're kind of the leader, then it's hard because you don't have someone to help you all the time. Are you in that situation, or do you get to like call up Pavel and be like, hey, can you just like look at this real quick? Or, because I still find that, I do get to work with my father to some extent, but really it's trying to find that community of people that we can kind of check and balance each other. Because even as the main teacher, quote unquote, I feel like I still need to have some accountability or someone to kind of help make sure that I'm seeing and thinking what I'm thinking. So for you, do you also have that check and balance, or do you have to kind of figure that all out on your own?
No, I have friends within the community that I rely on to. Now so little pity party for me. I've basically trained by myself for almost the last 20 years. Yeah. When I got started into kettlebell training, it was really new. Nobody was doing it. People were like, "Yeah, you have fun with that," and then they went and did other things. And with my travel and schedule and just different things, I've trained by myself for quite a while. There's an old, I think it's a Henry Rollins quote, where he says, "Don't be afraid to be alone with the iron." And I think that at times, there's a tremendous benefit to that self practice, that self-reflection that happens when you're just alone in your practice. So there's benefits to that. And, Fabio Zonin, Pavel, Mike Perry, and a few other folks. Like if I'm doing something and I'm like, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I send a video and
Okay.
we hop on a call and I'm like, hey, take a look at this. What am I doing?
Yeah. Well, I
And
think people love to hear that because I always, I check in with my Kung Fu brothers. I'm like, hey guys, let's work out together. And that way we can kind of help hold each other accountable, check each other out. And so I think it's probably refreshing for people to know, like even Brett Jones wants someone to look at something because it just, whenever we see you, especially on Instagram and everything, you're giving commentary on your stuff and we're like, looks great to us, but it's nice to know, like, no, like you still kind of feel like you need that, but also it's beneficial for you that it doesn't really matter where you are on this scale of knowledge because you're pretty much at the top, but it's still valuable to have
absolutely.
that.
And I think that Dr. Ed Thomas, one of my mentors and gentleman that taught me Indian club swinging and other things, he used to say that, and of course he's been swinging clubs and is considered to be one of the experts, especially in my mind. And he's like, the more I do this, the more disgusted I get because as a coach, you are able to see and feel those little refinements and changes. And, you pull yourself up on video and you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
I'm not happy with that because I'm as a student of strength, I'm always looking to pursue my skill. And I was teaching, had my first live workshop in over a year and a half and about a year and a half here recently. And I was telling those attendees, I've basically been swinging bells for performing the swing for 20 years and I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Every time I swing, I'm trying to do it better. There's something that I'm working on. There's a little thing that I want to try. There's an aspect of that skill that I want to do better. And I certainly I will assume that from a martial arts perspective, and if we're going to say the front kick is probably the most fundamental skill, I would assume most martial artists are still working on the front kick. And there's a little tweak, there's a little thing that you can do better. And so that progression of skill, and I think we talked about the cellist whose name I can never remember, who's very famous. And somebody asked him why he was still practicing at 92. And he was basically like, because I think I'm starting to make progress.
Yes. And that's why not just the kettlebell, but StrongFirst in general speaks so much to so many martial artists. I know you have so many martial artists in your organization because there is such a deep parallel to the philosophy of, you're never finished learning. It's when am I finished? Just because you get your certificate, that's like, oh, now you get to start this next journey. That now you're at the beginning. You're always at the beginning. You're always at the beginning, and there is always more to learn. And yes, you'll find that with the masters that are true masters. Usually say, I'm so. Like my dad always goes, oh, I'm so. Or I'm kind of getting there, right? And they've been doing it their entire lives, So it's definitely an amazing parallel. And so. I was talking to you because I get to talk to you sometimes off air once, and we talked about the difference between athletic trainers and physical therapists, because it feels like I know a lot of kids coming out of school, like physical therapy is like kind of that hot new thing. And like just so many people are going in the industry, and I never really understood the difference. And I would always ask Oscar, and he goes, why don't you ask Brett Jones? Like, okay, I will.
Absolutely. Can I key on one thing that you were just talking about a second ago?
Absolutely.
Because I think an important part of that, the seeking mastery. So that's essentially what we're talking about when we talk about this skill practice, and we're seeking mastery, and then that's kind of like the old, shoot for the moon, but you'll still end up in the stars sort of mindset. There's a couple of traps within that, because there's a tendency when you start really pursuing mastery, there can be a tendency to feel like it's never good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's not my mindset. Like, I'm not swinging the bell thinking, man, I'm just not good enough.
Right.
I'm swinging the bell thinking I can do this better.
Mm-hmm.
I have achieved a certain level of skill at this, but I know there's a refinement that could be made.
Yeah.
And so, for people who might be pursuing something and they've kind of fallen into that, I'm not good enough, or this isn't good enough trap, take a deep breath and realize that you're just learning.
Right.
And it's okay. And everybody can get better. Everybody can learn. And I wouldn't want somebody to walk away from either working with me or hearing this podcast and thinking, man, he's still working on it. And, boy, I'm just not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the message at all.
Right. No, definitely.
Just know that you're seeking mastery and that you want that refinement. And then the other trap is what you were alluding to. Oh, I'm done. Like, right. I've achieved X, so I can now leave that and go someplace else. And that's not the message either. Mm-hmm. This is certainly I've learned other things in the 20 years that I've been swinging a bell, but I'm still working on that skill as well. And so the I'm never done message can be difficult for people as well. Mm-hmm. And there's a very positive way to look at that, of always learning, always being the student, always progressing your skill. So I think those are important when you talk about skill acquisition and that seeking mastery, because you don't want to fall into those two traps.
No, that is a fantastic explanation and very good clarification, because that, I think, mindset is pretty much the majority of training. There's physicality, but if your mindset's not there, you're not going to be open to learning. And so, what you just described is fantastic. So thank you for that clarification.
Awesome. And then, to the question that you asked, physical therapist versus athletic trainer, I'm going to wrap that into maybe a larger conversation about the fitness industry, personal training and how that works, and physical therapy and athletic training. Mm-hmm. So when you see somebody with DPT behind their name, doctorate of physical therapy, or PT, physical therapist, because there was a time when you didn't have to have your, DPT came along later. Mm-hmm. PTs have been around for a long time. So when a personal trainer says that they're a PT, that's inappropriate. Those initials are set aside for physical therapists. And there are physical therapists who will correct you very quickly.
Oh yeah. They like to correct you about their titles.
Yes, definitely.
Titles seem important for some reason, but
Yeah, it's interesting. I think part of that is the investment nowadays to become a DPT is significant. Mm-hmm. I have a friend of mine whose friend is one of the people that's in charge of the physical therapy program at Pitt. And University of Pittsburgh Physical Therapy is one of the top, 2-3, it is considered to be about the top program in the nation right now. So it's good. And the cost of going through that program and coming out with your DPT is reaching the point where you won't come out making enough money to be able to pay off the education.
Yeah.
So that sort of tipping point is actually the industry's at that tipping point. And athletic training, which we'll get to here in a minute, they're charging down a similar path to where they're going to make getting to be an athletic trainer so expensive that you'll never pay off that education. It's a really bizarre standpoint, because it is a popular profession right now.
Yeah. So quick question. If somebody was a PT before DPT came out, did they have to go back and get DPT to stay PT?
No.
They're grandfathered in. So they've got their licensing, I guess.
Yeah. Licensing being separate from education.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So and I'm an LAT now. I just did my LAT for Pennsylvania. Basically because it was a course I wanted to take and I couldn't do it unless I put in my LAT number. So I'm like, I guess I'll have to do that. Because I'm certainly not practicing as an athletic trainer.
Right.
But yeah, so the state licensure for physical therapy or athletic training, you need to have a certain level of education in order to have that license.
I see.
But those two things are not.
I got it. Okay. Clear.
Yep.
Go
Cool.
on.
So PTs who have been around for a long time, even Gray Cook, who is a tremendous clinician and FMS and SFMA inventor and founder. He's not a DPT. He came through school at a point where that wasn't. I don't think that was around yet. When Gray got finished. So physical therapist, to break it down, they have training in the rehabilitation and working with geriatrics, pediatrics, wound care, orthopedics, and neurological conditions. Okay. So neurological, geriatric, pediatric, wound care, and orthopedics. So there's a lot that's covered. And you can imagine if you're a physical therapist at a hospital, the next person coming through the door could need, they've had a stroke and they need neurological rehab. They've had a joint replacement, so they need orthopedic. The next person's had burns, so they're coming in for wound care. Like, it can be a very challenging and varied skill set that you have to have as a physical therapist. Athletic trainers are more isolated towards the orthopedic treatment rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. Add to that the skills of emergency recognition, treatment, and dealing with athletic injuries on the field. So I've spine boarded people that had cervical or head injuries. That's always an exciting moment.
Explain exactly what that is.
Okay, so if you've ever seen
on the football,
they bring the stretcher out and they do the roll and they get them on the stretcher secured, and they're carting them off. And you can probably think of a few famous scenes where the athlete's giving a thumbs up while they're they're strapped to the board and they're giving a thumbs up. So, and you deal with everything from an athlete that comes in and says, "Oh, I've got a cold," to a broken ankle, to a dislocated shoulder, to your average garden variety sprains, strains, mm-hmm. and things like that. So there's a big skill set there that the athletic trainer has that the PT doesn't have, because we spend, especially when I came through school, as we were, you had intern programs versus I can't even remember the terms now because it doesn't exist anymore. Right. One of them was more training. Yeah. So I was supposed to accumulate 1,600 hours of experience in my college years to be able to sit for the national exam as the program that I came through, which at my junior into my senior year, we actually achieved, High Point University achieved what at that time was called KHEP, which is now called CADI, which is an allied healthcare stamp of approval. And so that was a big deal at the time because they had just, it was elevating the profession and the education. So, and I actually graduated with 3,000 hours because I don't know how to not work.
Right. That does not sound like a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Brett, an overachiever.
Let's say overworker. I don't know if I don't know if I've overachieved. I think I've probably overworked. So athletic trainers have the skill set of emergency treatment, recognition treatment, dealing with these athletic injuries and situations, orthopedic rehabilitation, which includes therapeutic modalities like E-stim, ultrasound, manual therapies, PNF, things of that nature. So there's a divide between physical therapy and athletic training. Athletic trainers have started to take more jobs within the clinical world. But again, focused towards orthopedic rehabilitation.
I see.
And so the fight between, because there's always a fight.
It's like a rivalry, right?
It really is. So yes. The Physical Therapy Association, since they were the first group to really get coordinated to have lobbyists to work towards licensure, they want to control scope of practice. They want to say, we can do this, you can't do that. And that's where athletic trainers and PTs really started to butt heads. Athletic trainers started to come out of the training room, off of the athletic field, into the clinic. PTs, in wanting to develop sports medicine practices with their orthopedics, they wanted to move into the sports realm. And so now you start to butt heads and have issues. And there was actually when athletic trainers were getting state licensure approved, there was a lot of fighting and lawsuits between Physical Therapy Association and the NATA. And fortunately, the NATA had the resources to kind of go through those battles. But scope of practice for athletic training is all over the place. So here in Pennsylvania, I would need to be basically at a school or in a clinic under the direction of a physician. Okay. And that sounds more heavy-handed than it is. It's basically you're supervised and approved to do these things by your supervising physician. It's not that the physician is standing over you all day.
Right. You just have to be in an office that's licensed, that has that qualification, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So you're supervised. But I have a friend who's in Missouri, and he actually runs an outpatient physical therapy sports medicine clinic. Okay. So they can treat and bill insurance. I can't bill insurance or get it approved in the state of Pennsylvania. But if I were to move to another state, I've got to then look at what is the scope of practice within that state. What am I allowed to do? Physical therapists have a little more continuity in their scope of practice across the country.
I see. Well, while I understand everything you said, I could never repeat it. So thank you for the explanation.
Absolutely. It's on tape. So
all right, just listen to this when I get asked the question. Well, I've always been super curious because I've now met so many physical therapists, and every, other kid I know, because of course I'm in martial arts and a lot of people do sports around me. So it's just such a popular program. And I don't feel like I've met as many athletic trainers in coming out of school now, but I feel like all the coaches that I know seasoned that are like at the mastery level, I feel like a lot of you guys are athletic trainers versus physical therapists, which is interesting to me. It's just who I happen to know. It's just, so I always found that kind of a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, I think there's an easier, I may not be saying this exactly how I want to say it, but I think there's perhaps an easier transition towards the fitness world as an athletic trainer because you are typically more involved with the strength conditioning programs at a particular school or it's a bigger part of your program. Yeah. Physical therapists are busy learning neurological.
Right. They kind of
pediatric, geriatric, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they have to do all this extra stuff. And if you're not interested in being in the hospital and helping someone after surgery, like in that way, then I see the variance there. So, because then you're getting all this extra if you don't really necessarily, that's not your interest, right?
Right. And so when I made the transition from athletic training to the fitness world, I'm coming at it from, I just finished up working as an athletic trainer at a private military academy and transition into running this hospital fitness wellness program. And I mean, we had everybody coming through the door. So I had the neurological stuff coming in. We had, because we were based in a PT clinic, and we would transition a lot of people from physical therapy to this wellness program. And so I worked with Parkinson's, stroke, wheelchair bound, orthopedic issues, all from high school athletes, to amputees, to wheelchair bound. I mean, it was, all over the board. And wow. I'm like in my first year of work at this wellness program, and I'm like, how do you do this and not be an athletic trainer? Because I had to bring a lot of rehabilitation skills to bear, because we had that transition from a PT program post rehab, as it would be called now. And but then as I pursued, I initially had the NSCA CPT, Certified Personal Trainer. And then like a year later, I went ahead and did the CSCS, which I've had now for 20 plus years. Yeah. And so, they're interesting thing with the fitness world.
I was going to ask.
PT and AT are pretty simple. You go through your 4 to 6 year program. You come out with either a DPT or an AT, and they actually have developed a DAT, a Doctorate of Athletic Training.
Okay.
Yeah. Went a whole other conversation on what the athletic trainers are doing. It's so frustrating because most athletic trainers are going to come out.
We just want more letters.
Well, and schools want more.
Funds. Yeah, of course. It's yeah.
They
gotcha.
ATs want to bring themselves up to the same level.
Of course, they don't want to be. They don't want to have that. PT has one thing over them kind of thing. That's the rivalry goes back to the beginning of time, and they got to keep up. So
pretty much. Yeah. Now, the problem is the AT is going to come out of school making 30 some a year at a high school. Typically, maybe you get into a clinic and make a little bit more than that. So that school bill, whereas PTs are going to come out and they're probably going to start somewhere in the $60,000 range. And that's probably dated information, but
yeah, I know, but I'm with you in that dated information.
Yeah. So
maybe right now, who knows what they're coming out making, because it's been crazy, but yeah.
Yeah. Definitely different times, but, another conversation.
Yes, of course.
So within the fitness world, there's like 400 different certifying bodies.
Yeah, it's confusing.
It's extremely confusing. $99 you can get online and you can get certified in just about anything. You want to be a personal trainer, you want to be yoga and Pilates, like you can go on and those are not good.
Right. And this is what I've tried to explain to people, because they're like, well, my personal trainer at blah, blah, blah gym. And I'm like, well, you just need to be careful. Right. Because you could just I never understood how you could just take an online test and be certified. Because at SFG, it's like 3 days of hell. And then from there, you're still kind of, like I said, that's you're definitely skilled, but you become skilled as a coach when you start coaching. That's where you get your experience. It just means you know how to move. You've been able to explain it at the camp, et cetera. But like, it's the years of coaching. So I usually just try to tell people, well, how long has your trainer been training people? Because I don't know what all those certificates mean, right? Unless I know the organization, right? And so, but yeah, the 99, not good.
Right. And so there's NCCA is a national credentialing body. So they approve different certifications, and it just shows that certification is at X level. ATC is the National Athletic Trainer Association. The BOC is NCCA approved. Physical therapy tests are NCCA approved. Okay. NSCA, National Strength Conditioning Association, ACE, American Council on Exercise, and several others are in that realm of, they've gone through the credentialing process. They have a certain level of notoriety.
They've been around a while.
They've met certain standards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so that is a good indicator that certification, and any certification, is simply a base level of knowledge. And when you start talking about personal training in the fitness industry, and people, I say this and people kind of chuckle, and Brett, he's being dramatic. But at a certain point, people's lives are in your hands.
Yes.
100%. Yeah, it's a very real thing. And just like there are cops who have never had to pull their weapon in the decades of service, there's cops that get to pull their weapon on their first year of service. just as the same way in the training world, there are trainers who have never had to do CPR or handle an emergency situation in decades of practice. And there's people that have had to do it right away.
Yeah.
And so that alone means you need to, if we're going to treat this as a profession and elevate what we're doing within the fitness realm, we need to take it seriously. And so, a base certification like ACE or NSCA or, NASM, there's many options. ACE and NSCA are two of my tops. ACSM is very good, but maybe a little more directed towards the exercise physiologist and people that would be doing cardiac and pulmonary rehabilitation. You need this base level of knowledge. You need to understand the anatomy and the contraindications and have that kind of first aid skill that could come in really handy.
Yeah.
So that is a starting point. And then to your point, then you start coaching people and you start putting this stuff into practice. And, that's where you really, that's where you learn.
Yeah. And the certification thing, it's so tricky because really your clients have zero idea. Like Oscar has what he calls his ego wall, and he's super humble person, but he says this is my ego wall. And the SFG is one that's super important to him, obviously, as you know, but I think he also has his NSCA. Is that the one you have to have a college degree to take it? Okay. So he has that one. And then the ACE is kind of the other one it's reputable. Like you said, it has a standard, but maybe you don't need a degree to take.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So those are kind of the two like buckets, I call them, right? And so, he has that, but I tell him, and then he has his Wallum one, which takes like 20 years to get. And so he finds that one important. But like I told him, your clients, you could literally make one up. And I want to do this. I want to make one up that's just like strongest, most whatever interesting, had like some ridiculous like cupcake eating record or whatever. Like I want it to be just absurd and just have it there and see if anyone ever reads it. Because this means nothing to the clients themselves, usually, unless they're really like picky and they've done research, but people won't know the difference. So that's why those $99 ones, like you wonder how they're even allowed to be in existence because it's irresponsible. Like you said, people come into him all the time broken. And, he does the whole, hey, I can't treat pain. This is not my realm, whatever. But obviously, he just knows movement so much. He's done the FMS. He's tried to constantly learn. And he's definitely not a PT or an AT, so he doesn't want to ever cross those boundaries. But then they'll come to him and say, well, you're actually helping me more than my PT is. And so I want to keep doing this because, they're just exercises and he doesn't, there's no manual therapy, he doesn't put his hands on anyone, but like, it's just hard because how are people supposed to know? They go to someone they think is certified because they say they're certified and then they get injured because they're having like 70-year-olds do these crazy, trying to get records, like I hate to call it out, but like the CrossFit thing, right? Like it's just, it's frustrating for at least in the PT-AT realm, you have to have a license, you have to do these things. But in the personal fitness, you're much more likely to have trouble finding a good coach, for example.
Yeah, I'll wrap this into like a scope of practice conversation because that's a huge one within the industry. The fitness realm, the fitness industry is pretty much unregulated.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a degree. We have the StrongFirst Brazil, and we're in a bunch of different countries. And so you go to Brazil or Australia, the UK, even Hungary. You have to have some sort of degree or national certification that allows you to practice as a personal trainer or fitness instructor in those countries. We're just unregulated. Anybody that likes to work out can take one of those $99 online certifications and end up being a trainer.
Yeah.
And I told a group of, there's Mike Perry will, if you ever have him on the show, he'll tell you the story of how he's actually battling cancer right now. He's early into his chemo and battling cancer, but doing very well, doing really well. So it's, but that's certainly been, well, that can be a whole other podcast on that first time that a friend had cancer after my cancer, and what that feels like, what that means.
Yeah.
But there's times where I bring reality to different situations. And so I was talking to a group of graduating college graduates in exercise phys or exercise science. I forget what they called the degree. And I told them all, because they're, you come out of school, you got the 4-year degree,
yes.
you feel like you're all that in a bag of chips. And so I told them, I said, look, you're going to get out-earned 10-1 by somebody with a $99 certification and a personality.
Yes.
Because we are a very personality-driven service industry where your knowledge doesn't have to meet your ability to get clients. So that's kind of the reality of the industry.
Yeah.
I personally am a fan of establishing some sort of minimum standard and potentially licensure in order to work within the fitness world. Because I do think it's important. I do think there's safety considerations. I think there's, and exercise, especially now post-COVID and for many years, exercise is recognized as one of the most effective ways to maintain this, as I like to call it, meat suitcase that we get to drive around the universe. Exercise is one of the best ways that we maintain our health. And so especially post-COVID, that's being highlighted, that fit people tend to do better. There's some quote research that was done on that's been over and misinterpreted, as the fitness industry is apt to do. And so I'm a fan of some minimum standards and some sort of regulation. And because in the end, scope of practice is really important, to your point of, Oscar being very clear that I don't treat this and I don't do that. And there's people out there that they do have a bad experience with a PT or an AT, and they don't get better. Now, what they may not be telling you is they were given a home exercise.
And they don't do their exercises. Absolutely. And they need accountability is really what they need.
Yeah. And they were approved for 12 visits. They only went for 3 because they didn't want to pay their copay.
For sure.
There's all kinds of things that get involved there. And so, but I, for one, because I do have a clinical background as an athletic trainer, I, more than maybe even more than I should, I draw hard lines in scope of practice. And it is not to treat or diagnose any sort of conditions or pain or anything like that. I mean, I have skills in orthopedic evaluation, but that's not my role as a personal trainer. And so because somebody will have that bad experience, and then they go to a trainer, a personal trainer of some sort, and they have a quote good experience, they start to feel better. That trainer can start to believe that they are more knowledgeable and better than the PTs and ATs.
Exactly.
And just like the old joke of what do you call the person that graduated last in medical school? Doctor. So there might not be the doctor you want, but they finished medical school. But they
still have the MD. Yeah, you're right.
So
and that's why you have to be really careful. And this is why I always tell people it's not about the letters or the certificates or what. Go and talk. Because even with martial arts, people are like, oh, I'm moving here. What's a good school? I'm like, I don't know, but sit there, watch the class, watch how the instructor teaches, watch what the students look like, see how you like them, because it's a relationship. I bring up Oscar a lot, of course, with you, but like he always says, I'm a horrible coach. I'm not a great coach at all. I mean, obviously, all the information I have is for me. I'm selfish. I want to learn everything there is to learn. I mean, Brett, if I could tell you how often I have to hear your voice in my house because your FMS video or your get up tutorial, whatever is on, but he, it's constant certifications, and he says it's for his ego, but really he just likes to learn. And so he always says, yeah, I mean, my clients don't care about, the joint moving this way, or that now I'm going to have more mobility. They just like to come and hear my jokes. They just want to hang out. And so that whole personality thing it's so true, and Mike Boyle, like one of our other coaches, he's always like, certified nice guy. That's the first certificate you need, because if you're a jerk, nobody wants to train with you, regardless of how many certificates that are actually valid you have. And there's obviously something to be said for that. But I think I'm with you with, it would be nice to have some basic regulation, because I hate seeing people come in because they were injured and then they get a bad experience with personal training. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they don't want to ever have a personal trainer, in the same way that they're like, oh, I didn't really like my PT because they didn't do it, or it wasn't a good one, or whatever. But like, there's so many more bad personal trainers out there because of the lack of standard.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that in the end, so we talked last time about conspiracy theories and things of that nature. So here's one of mine.
Okay.
So physical therapists are aware that people don't want to pay their copay, and they kind of don't want to out of pocket for physical therapy, typically.
Yes. Well, it's expensive.
But they'll go spend $50 to $100 an hour on a personal trainer. Mm-hmm. So that is not lost on the physical therapy profession. Mm-hmm. And I know this from having conversations with many different physical therapists. So they're mindful of the fact that people are self-paying higher rates than copays to access personal training and fitness. That will result in us being tempted to be put under physical therapy direction. That's my little conspiracy theory, that in the end, if there is a drive, and there's already a form of licensure for personal trainers in the District of Columbia, in DC. And so and there are bills and things in different states that are moving towards licensure for personal training. Mm-hmm. And one of the main things that drives licensure is people getting sued. So as a profession, as you start to, so massage therapy, for example, one of the reasons there was a drive towards licensure for massage therapists was there were a lot of legal and situations and lawsuits that ranged from inappropriate behavior to people getting hurt. And so the legislature and the whoever said, wait, we need to regulate you because look at all these people that are having these bad experiences. Yeah. That personal training used to be very low on that list. There weren't a lot of lawsuits. There weren't a lot of things. That's not the case anymore. There's a lot of lawsuits happening. So licensure is going to come around in some fashion. There will be some sort of regulation. Now, what we got passed in DC is so watered down and ineffective that it's not worth. It's not what it could have been. Right. Now, the personal trainer is going to fight against this. Mm-hmm. And there's people out there, and it's the old, my experience trumps your education argument, and I don't need to be regulated, and blah, 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 blah. It's coming anyway, in my opinion.
Wow. How soon do you think that'll be?
Fortunately, the wheels turn slowly. So
things don't work so well.
Right. And in some ways, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
And in some ways, I wish government was less efficient. In other ways, they could be far more efficient. But I would say within 5 to 10 years on the outside.
Wow. Okay.
There will be some form of licensure.
Interesting.
And we can either now 400 different certifying bodies, no coordination in the industry, basically. So how are we going to get together and actually protect ourselves as professionals as this starts to happen? Because we could very easily end up getting dictated to and having a different ability to manage our own profession. So, I think there should be some greater thought towards that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think maybe hopefully like the NSCA and the ACE, like they're like the stronger bodies, like maybe they could just kind of recognize those as like the standard, because I don't think that it's fair also because college isn't for everyone. Like I got my college education. Half my students don't even know that. They just think I'm some Kung Fu teacher, right? Like I actually have that, but my UCF degree certificate is, I don't know, in a drawer somewhere. Like I am proud of it, but it doesn't make me need that. I don't need that for Kung Fu. Right. But so I'm all about education, but I am not about kids coming out of school that will never get out of debt. Like if education wasn't as expensive, I think it's definitely a valid path that everyone should experience. But I also don't think it's for everyone. I love in Europe that they do apprenticeship, because if I want to be an electrician or a plumber, that's what I go and I learn everything about. And I'm the master of that at the end of that. And I've trained, and that's what they work and do. And that's their livelihood. Right. So I just don't think it's for everyone. So I don't think it's fair that you have to. Right. But that would be, and a little more prestigious, a little bit more like, oh, here you've studied this and et cetera. But I think it's also unfair when it's really not for everyone, because unfortunately right now college is still, and most of our education is about being a good test taker. Right. Absolutely. And I was never a good test taker. So I think maybe that's why I say all this.
Well, I think as specific to like the fitness world, I think what I would be a fan of is a little more of the massage therapy direction.
Yes.
So it's a 2-year associate's degree. There's X number of hours and practical hours to be accomplished that would lead to the ability to take some sort of national exam that would then approve you for a licensure within your state.
Yeah.
That would at least set some minimum knowledge. And, people that are currently in the industry, grandfathered in, actually, I might have to look that up. I don't know where the term grandfathered in came from. It just hit me. Like
I know you love to have the origins of things.
Oh yeah. It's like, if anybody ever says the whole 9 yards, okay, it's not a football reference. A strip of ammunition in the bombers in World War II was 9 yards long. So if you gave them the whole 9 yards, you had expended this strip of ammunition. Anywho, I'm gonna.
I learned something all the time from Brett.
I'm a wealth of useless information. But I'll have to look up grandfathered.
Team. Okay, next podcast. Yeah, you're probably really great at trivia.
Yeah, decent.
I would be like, Brett's on my team.
I do okay. In fact, we have one of my wife's clients. They have a trivia game that they do with their family on a regular basis, and they started texting us. And I'm like, oh yeah, Zachary Taylor. So
I love it. I will note that for if I ever get drafted into some sort of trivia. Oscar's pretty good at it too, because he loves just seeking knowledge, and he's really good at retaining it and then being able to explain it or like remembering things. And that's definitely not my forte. But
there's things in my life I wish I remembered better, and then there's a bunch of useless information that I could probably download in some fashion, but it's all stuck up there.
I understand. Well, we have to forget things to remember, right? And so it's an interesting thing. I just got that I'm reading the Sanjay Gupta book on keeping sharp. And so I was like, oh, I really like that. That makes so much sense. And, it's fascinating. So I know we have to wrap up because you have another call. I always like to end with something a little bit like light and fun. And I mean, it doesn't sound light and fun, but I know that when you had your cancer, you lost your taste buds and your ability to enjoy food, and thank heavens that is back. And I wanted to know, like, what was one of the first things that you were excited to retaste? Because, I love talking about food. So.
Well, everything, because literally for a certain period of time, everything was paste, and it was just, there was no flavor to anything. And at the worst, I couldn't, vanilla was too caustic to my throat. Like it hurt to drink even the most bland thing. Anyway. I love steak, a well-seasoned steak. That was something I was very excited to get back to.
Nice.
And I actually I really like hot sauce.
Oh,
so Tabasco.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of the other one that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. but it's that the salty and spicy were the flavors that I really wanted to get back to. And a silver lining, because I whatever situation happens, there's usually a silver lining, right? Silver lining of the pandemic is my training's been more consistent because I'm not traveling. It was easy to get back and forth to the hospital because there wasn't traffic, because nobody was on the roads. So there's always silver linings. So one of the things that has not come back is my taste for sweets. Oh, the change in saliva, and because and I may have mentioned this previously.
Yes,
you do not realize how magical saliva is until you don't have it.
Yeah,
so
you talked about that.
Yeah, it starts to break down the sugars in particular, and so that's one of the things that makes sweets so wonderful. Well, that has not come back, and my taste for chocolate is very different because I am previously massive chocoholic.
I remember.
Oh yeah. My birthday cake for years was chocolate chip cake with chocolate fudge icing.
Wow.
So the more chocolate that you could put in it, the better. And that really has not come back.
Interesting.
Now, from a weight management perspective, this is a good thing.
I love it. Well, you do look fantastic. There's this photo you posted, like you're out and there's this like outside. And I was like, oh my God, Brett Jones you always look strong, but you really just look so strong. And congratulations on that. And I am so excited to be able to be with you on that, feel like I'm with you on the journey watching and just kind of seeing you go back to, I think, even better health than before in some ways. Right. And so that has been amazing. And congratulations on that. And of course, passing the 1 year mark. So, all right. Well, we will have to wrap this up because we all have to get on with our days. I'm sure listeners as well. So as always, and I will have you back on because now that's it. You're stuck with me. So thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you, Mimi. It's always great to chat, and look forward to the next time.
All right. We'll see you soon. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.